Okay, next up in the model menu is the EPA, or endpoint adjustment. Some radios known as travel adjust. Okay, so what this does is set how far when you move a stick, your servo will move. By default, they're all set 100. Our maximum, and let's take a look what our maximum is 140. So that means if I set that to 140 when I move the stick all the way over, let's say 100% was this much, 140 will be this much, or somewhere around there. So it moves the servo farther. I can also reduce the value to say I don't want the servo to move that far. Let's say it binds when you give 100% on this servo. You can reduce the amount of throw so the servo only moves to that percent. Pretty straightforward. So I'm doing aileron right now. If you want to change the other value, you actually have to move the aileron stick to change that value to get to the left and right. All right. Throttle, same kind of thing. Notice there's 2 pages. There's your other servos, setting that up. Now the final comment I'll make about this is, as you saw in my Dual Rate Expo screens, this is not an absolute value. Setting it to 100 does not mean that under every single condition that servo is only going to move that far. As I showed in the Dual Rate Expo video, I can make a dual rate that's 120% of the EPA, which means the servo is going to move farther in 120, setting dual rate to 120, than what this screen shows. Understand that this is not a final value. You can set up mixes that overdrive this EPA, a dual rate as I showed that overdrives the EPA. You can use an offset that overdrives the EPA, so on and so forth. Understand this is not the maximum. This does not set the maximum. You can do things that will overdrive it. Makes sense? All right, so that's basically your EPAs, and we'll continue on. Okay, next up in the model menu is the flight condition menu. Important to helicopters. I think some airplane guys use it, but again, we're focusing on helicopters. So by default, there are no conditions set. What I mean by that is, let's go back to the main screen. It says normal. I flip all these switches all day long, and it never changes to idle up 1, idle up 2, or hold. That's because you actually have to set them up. They're not set by default. All right, and by the way, always quick tips. Instead of going into model and flight condition, I can just click on the condition and get into the condition menu. All right, so let's take a look. Only thing listed is normal. All right, and no switches or anything set. So what we want to do is we want to insert a condition. Now, the order these are in are by priority. The lowest on the list takes priority. Anyway, let's insert idle up 1. All right, and I insert that. And okay, now I've inserted it, but watch. Still says normal up here. Flip my switches. Nothing. I have to set a switch as well. Even though I've inserted the condition, I have to set the switch. So we hit null, and we're going to go into select. And I'm going to select my E switch right here. This is what, it's a 3 position. You could select this if you only wanted idle 1 and 2. I prefer this, so I get idle 1 and idle, I'm sorry. You could select this for normal and idle 1, or you could have normal, idle 1, idle 2. Your preference. If you select the 2 position, then this will be normal, idle 1, and you'll have to set a different switch for, say, idle 2, and so on and so forth, and on up from there. Anyway, I'm going to pick E, since it's a 3 position. All right, and then I'm going to go back. Now, then I have to set when it's on. All right, remember this is a 3 position, right? So that's normal. I want that to be idle 1. All right, so I can go ahead and click here in the middle position, select on. That will be my idle up position for 1. Let's go back. And now notice, it says normal up here. I click this to center, and notice it says idle up 1. Normal, idle up 1. If I go to this forward position here, notice, so there's normal, idle 1, but if I go all the way, notice it goes back to normal. Okay, it's because we didn't set up that switch position. So what I'm going to say is, let's say you just want a normal and idle 1, and if you accidentally, while you're flying in the field, and you only want idle 1 and not idle 2, you don't want to go back into normal if you pull that switch too far. So one of the things you can do is we go back into this switch for idle 1, and we say both of these are on. All right, so now watch. Normal, idle 1, and if I flip to the 3rd position, it still says idle 1. That way, if I move the switch too far, I stay in idle 1. However, I'm going to turn that off, and we're going to go back, and let's say I want normal idle 1 and I want idle 2. All right, what I want to do is I want to insert, and I'm going to say, hey, I want idle up 2. By the way, notice idle up 1's not on here anymore. We've already set it to something. Pardon me, straighten up the radio here. So I'm going to say idle up 2, and I'm going to go set. All right, well, idle up 2, watch, normal, idle 1, and notice I still don't go into idle up 2. I also have to set the switch for that. So we'll go in here, and we'll hit select. We said switch E, and we'll come out. Now notice it says C2 here. That's because I've set idle 1. What I want is I want idle 2 to be all the way forward. I set it to on. All right, we back out. And now watch. Normal, idle 1, and then the third position is idle 2. Now remember I said what you have in here goes by priority. So 1 second. I'm going to delete this and I'm going to show you what the priority is. So I'll tell you what. I'm gonna go ahead. Let's set up a hold now. All right. So hold on. So we want to insert another one. So not only do we want normal idle 1, idle 2, and we want hold. Hold is a safety. You should always program it, nitro or electric. It allows you to hit that button and take the throttle to 0. We'll go through that when we set up hold later. But I'm gonna go ahead. I'm gonna hit insert, and I'm gonna say I want to set up a hold. I'm gonna hit set, and this time we once again no matter what switch I throw. It's not going to go into hold, so I got to set the switch. I'm going to hit null. Now this time, I want my hold switch on most Heli radios. It's over here on the right, and I like the forward one. You don't want this momentary trainer, although you could, but I wouldn't want to hold this and stay in hold, and if I let go, it comes out of hold. So I usually set this switch right here. All right, so we're going to set switch, G, and we're going to come out, and it's going to ask us when do we want it on. Well, right now it's all the way back, so that's out of hold. So I'm going to hit here, I'm going to say on, and now it's going to switch into hold. So now when I flip this switch here on the right, you'll see it go into hold. Alright, so the reason I set all that up, and this is the basic settings actually, is because I wanted to show you the priority of the menu here. Notice when I go into normal or idle 1 or idle 2, anytime I hit hold, all right, I've just activated hold. It says hold. Now, no matter where I put my idle switch, it stays in hold. That is the priority of this menu. The lowest thing on the list takes priority. So what I'm going to do is I am going to delete idle 2, all right? And I'm going to say yes. So now we've got normal, idle 1, and hold. So I'm in hold. I come out of hold. There's idle up 1. I flip the switch to position 3, it goes back to normal because I deleted idle 2. I go into hold. Hold is always activated no matter what. Now I'm going to add idle 2 at lower. Set. All right, we're going to set our switch. It's null. I'm going to select, and we're going to go back to what I just did, and I'm going to continue, and I'm going to say this is idle 2. I'm going to go on, so it activates just like I did. Now notice the priority in the menu. So if I go into idle 1 and hit hold, hold still takes priority over idle 1. It also takes priority over normal. See that? Makes sense? But watch when I go into idle 2. Idle 2 being the lowest on the list. Now when I hit hold, hold does not go into hold. Idle 2 has priority. As long as I'm in idle 2, it overrides any other things I have set for other switches for these conditions. All right? Hope that makes sense. So I'm going to delete this. And so we only have the idle 1 and hold. All right. So that kind of covers, the flight condition menu. All right. So understand its priorities, etc., etc. Okay. So, and by the way, well, one thing I didn't bring up is, let's say I did put idle 2 in last. So we're going to do that, and I'm going to hit set, and I'm going to go null, and I'm going to set my switch, and I'm going to set it to E, and I'm going to back out, and I'm going to set it to on. I'm going to go on. I'm going to back out, and notice my priority. Let's say, oops, I did want idle 2. Let's say I first set up the helicopter for these 3, and later I wanted to add an idle 2. Well, how the heck do you insert it there and get that hold to priority? Well, what you can do is use this priority scroller, and it'll scroll it up or down depending on what you want priority. So don't worry if you set up a normal and a hold and later added idle up. This will allow you to change the priorities. Okay? Make sense? All right. That kind of covers the flight condition menu. All right, if that didn't make sense or there's something else you want me to cover out of flight conditions, let me know and we'll continue on.